Hey Cosmic Explorers! This video we will talk about Leonology, a unified framework of reality that discusses energy, the infinite and eternal values of form, and the source of all creation. Energy is fundamental to this reality. That's period. It's fundamental. And information is how energy becomes structured form. Science, physics, it shows that the fundamental state of pretty much any form, any material thing, even particles, ultimately is energy structured in specific ways. We see this in quantum physics when it comes to like snowflakes, when it comes to why do we keep seeing spirals, hexagons, squares. There's shapes in our reality that keep manifesting in the structure of reality itself. And we have to think about that. Why is that the case? Why are geometric patterns consistently manifested in galaxies, in quantum physics, in even our own biology? Our own biology shows that DNA are energy bonds, energetic bonds that forms geometric information. We see the helix. We see it structured. And why do our DNA have a consistent structure, a consistent form? Because it's energy. That energy takes the form of geometric patterns. Those geometric patterns of energy manifest structured reality. We can go even to electromagnetism. So I'm messing that up. But it reveals that signals are energy waves shaped once again into geometric patterns, geometric information. When you speak, when you think, your thought, the neuron that fires to the other neurons to state what's going on, what information, move my leg, move my finger, run, all those things are energy in geometric patterns that induce an informative response. What does that mean? That means this reality, the core foundation of this reality is energy. Within that energy exists the potential for all informative possibilities, all potential. So energy has inherent informative potential within it. But in this reality, it doesn't have that. In this reality, you have to think about it. Even scientists, modern science accepts the Big Bang Theory. And the Big Bang Theory shows that there was a unified singular point that held all the potentiality in this world, and it expanded, and this is where we are now. I call that the unified energetic information singularity. It's where we all come from. It's where everything, all potential itself comes from. So energy is the foundation of this reality, and then information is intrinsic to the energy itself. Then through consciousness, through direction, that information is commanded, inputted, embedded to give structure to the energy. If I said, okay, I want to make a space, an environment for creation itself, I would have to take some energy. I would have to put intent into that energy, information, and that information will structure the energy through geometric patterns, and that would manifest certain informational responses. This is how laws come into play. This is how divine consistencies come into play that we can't overcome as a human. We have multiple examples that reveal that energy is foundation. And it's structured by geometric pattern. That's what it is. You can look this up You can go to sound waves, you can go to UV, solar, period, chemical bonds. All these show on a fundamental level that energy is being structured in very specific ways to manifest very specific results. And that's the fundamental of Leonology. The fundamental belief is that everything, all of reality, the very potential for reality to exist in itself came from a unified energetic information singularity, which all possibilities, potentials, all information, all things that could exist was within that point. Then the consciousness of the singularity wanted specific characteristics to manifest in this reality, but also gave responses to other forms of creation. And that's obvious. That's why we have rules and regulations that we didn't create as humans. And we have to abide by this reality because it's structured in a way there are certain things, no matter what we do, we cannot overcome. Now, you would say, why do I care? You know, you would, a lot of people, why does this matter? Okay, it's energy, sure. Information, sure. But that's the point. When you understand that energy is the primary of all reality, that energy precedes information, and information precedes form, you can start to navigate reality and understand, oh, I feel angry. This angry, this upset, this emotion is tied to specific informational patterns. And it's going to put through my comprehension, it's going to push me, allure me, tempt me to certain behaviors, habits, perceptions. If I allow this energy to continuously manifest in me without me being able to control it, it is going to manifest good or bad, unpredictable, chaotic entropy in your life. So the reason why this even matters to you is because once you understand and are able to perceive reality in an energetic, informative basis, you can navigate life through a greater clarity, understanding, oh, if I go to a casino, my greed's gonna manifest. If I put myself in a vulnerable position for love, but I'm not at a good mental, emotional state, I'm gonna manifest possibly a bad partner. That if I keep allowing and ignoring my emotions, that they're gonna manifest in unpredictable ways. This is how we are able to navigate through life. It becomes very simple when you sit there and you think, why is all this negativity happening? But then you look around and see, oh, negative forms of manifestations are all around the environment, which, you know, energy precedes information. So if you have structures that have negative patterns, negative, negative responses, negative experiences attached to them, that's going to bring about also negative informational patterns. So we just need to be able to see that and understand that. But that's the basis of Leonology, that everything in this world, everything, this whole reality and the potential of the reality itself started out as energy that had intrinsic informational patterns of everything that could be, would be, or should be. And the consciousness, which is source, God, you know, a lot of people, you know, I say source, I say God source. Whatever word you want to use to the highest intelligence that has created all things, go ahead. I call it source. That source foundationally created all things. And once you can understand the nature of God, the nature of source, it reflects the nature of this reality. And we, as humans, are part of this reality. So we'll be able to understand and gain greater clarity on how to move forward in this world. Every form that exists has infinite and eternal conceptual variations of its base form. When we look at things, You know, you could look at an apple, a seed, a pencil, doesn't matter. We see that form and we assume, oh, that's what it is. That's the finite form. That's the pencil. But we don't normally reflect and say, wait a minute, this pencil could have been so many different variations. This apple could have taken wide variety, different shapes and colors. Why is this apple red? Some apples are green. What functions, what things happen as to where, you know, these are the rules in place? But that's the thing. I like to say an example, you know, we'll go deeper into this in a second, but if you're walking and you have to make a decision to go left or to go right, if you choose to go left, the possibility of going right still exists and will always exist. You know, a lot of people, you know, they say, oh, I can't even imagine infinite. I can't even imagine eternal. Stop trying to imagine it. Just know that there are things like ideas, conceptualizations, potentials, possibilities that always exist. And I'm not saying it will always exist at every single point in your life, because depending on your circumstances, depending on your understanding, your comprehension, you may not be able to make some of these decisions, or these decisions may not be applicable for you. But in that moment of time, you could have always went left, always went right. And those are just two possibilities. There are infinite and eternal potentialities. Even with me sitting here, I have infinite and eternal possibilities of how I can express myself. So, you know, everything exists on a spectrum, and that's reality. But people say that and say, well, if everything exists on a spectrum, you know, there's infinite and eternal, you know, forms of information. How do we know what to express, focus, analyze, and use in our reality? Well, you have to be able to have categorization. You have to be able to say, okay, this information, this, you know, whatever you want to call it, this relates to our reality at a closer level than something else. The flying spaghetti monster, I don't see one outside. I've never interacted with a flying spaghetti monster. It could exist somewhere in the world. I don't know. Majority of the world doesn't seem to care. There's no search for it. So that information is probably very far from our reality. But if you're talking about like an earthquake or thunderstorms, that's common. That happens all the time. So there is manifestations of information that are closer to real, and then others that are less than real. But both of them, earthquakes, thunderstorms, or the flying spaghetti monster, both exist as eternal and infinite concepts that we can talk about 1,000 years from now, 2,000 years from now, 3,000 years from now, even if they go exist. The fact that we know of them, as long as we keep data that it existed, that's an infinite and eternal form. You know, we need to understand and take a step back. When we look at the word and look at forms, and I want to give Plato, because Plato was big to me understanding, you know, forms and higher forms of things. You know, he had, just to go really quickly, Plato had something called the theory of forms. And he pretty much said that every single form we see of anything, like a chair, has a higher form and a lesser form. And the higher form is, it becomes more divine, more reflective of God's pure energy. So it's like there's the highest form of a chair. And we can't get to those forms at the level we're in. We can only make lesser reflections, even if they are still beautiful to us. We have to understand that we cannot put so much weight and so much identity on one form of anything. There's so many different variations of creation, so many different ways that me, you, or anyone can express themselves, can create, can think. You know, a few examples is quantum wave functions reveal possible infinite outcomes. You know, in science, quantum wave functions is essentially the probability wave of how molecules are going to move, manifest, or change positions. And the quantum wave function just kind of says, well, there's many different possibilities that can manifest. We're not sure. So it exists as that wave function, as that probability cloud. That's one way. Another way is DNA evolution. That's why no human's gonna have the same fingerprint. Why is that? How can there be billions and billions of people in this world and nobody is similar? No, no one is similar. Nothing is similar. That's another thing. You can't find me two rocks, two stones, nevertheless two people that are that are completely similar. It doesn't exist. Variation and differences exist in our world as a law. It's not something we can get away from. But DNA evolution, that's another example of something that's happening in reality that expresses possible infinite and eternal variations. Because I've yet to see a human can look like each other. You can have two twins that are so similar, but they have their differences. So fractals. Fractals is another verified fact of our reality that occurs. Fractals are essentially small variations of a consistent pattern that expresses itself in the micro level of reality and the macro level of reality. Spirals, hexagons, circles, why? Why do we have consistent patterns from the micro to the macro? And it seems endless. Like some of these fractals positioning, even in mathematics, even in how we view them, it seems like it's an endless, infinite variation of macro to micro, micro to macro, that the universe reflects itself in the lower levels and the higher levels. As the saying goes, as above, so below. And this is really important. Understanding infinite and eternal variation of this realm is super important in reality. The reason why it's important is because people have become rigid thinkers. A mailman sees themselves as just a mailman. A bus driver sees himself as just a bus driver, My name is Leon Milton, and if I was a more rigid person, less open-minded, I may just see myself as Leon Milton with these specific characteristics and these specific manifestations of identity, and that's all I am. I can't be anything more than that. It limits yourself, but you're not supposed to be limited. You're supposed to have free will and decide, but you need to understand the potentials, the possibilities around you to make, informed decisions, I would say. In this reality, everything has conceptual forms. And, people, they want to say, well, you can't verify infinite. You can't verify eternal. Of course not. We don't, right now at the current state, how would you even verify infinite? How would you get to the end and say, okay, it's infinite? You couldn't do it. But you have to use logic, rationalization, and just common sense. Look at the world. If I'm walking outside, there's so many possibilities of expressions that I can do. It's overwhelming. I can never, I can't even think, even if I try my hardest, of all the potentials and possibilities I can manifest. It's impossible. So, just for debate when it comes to that kind of question, is just if it's a billion or infinite and eternal, pretty much the same thing, okay? It really matters because you don't have to see yourself as one-dimensional. You don't have to see yourself as rigid. You don't have to see yourself as finite. And the issue with finite, if you focus on a material world, a physical world, you're going to fall into a belief system to say this is the only thing that is. This is the only thing that could be. And the issue with that is that if you become finite, you limit yourself, you limit your progression, and you limit what you're capable of. You limit your potential. Ultimately, that's the truth. You limit your potential when you stay rigidly in a one-dimensional framework of reality without understanding that there's so many different potentials that could be for yourself, for your interactions, for the people around you. And we're too one-dimensional. We're too, no, things have to be like this. It does matter. Once you understand that reality is founded on infinite and eternal potential that has just taken manifestations of its current state. But even current states are always changing and degrading. And we're always creating new different variations. But that's not just for physicality, that's for you, that's for who you are as a person. It opens your mind to what could be. So you can take a step back and stop focusing so much on what is. All of creation comes from the unified energetic information singularity. Just to clarify what that is, if you study the Big Bang, all the potential of our world came from a single point, smaller than a pin. And it created everything. My idea is similar. My idea is very similar. But what I'm saying is, not just this reality, just potentiality itself, before creation could even begin to express itself. Within the void existed source. Source is a unified, energetic information singularity. Even if there's a multitude of other sources, I don't know. I'm only going to say there is one. I know there is one source. That one source, in relation to our reality, created the potential itself for the potential itself to manifest. It held the potential, but you have to understand, what does it take to create a reality? Think about that. Like when you make a video game on a computer, you have space. The space is pre-constructed for certain things to happen. And then within that space, you create a world and interactions of that world based on the interactions and, the rules and principles in place of that space. So that's what the energetic information singularity did. It simply expressed itself to express potential. And then within that potential, it expressed potentiality. And that's what God, source, that's what I identify as God's source. People can identify however they want, but that's what I believe. All creation, all potential, physically, mentally, spiritually, conceptually, everything you possibly can think of, good, evil, right, wrong, whatever, and even things we have yet to understand, they all come from this unified energetic information singularity, God's source. And those, a few examples of this, just so I'm not talking too out there, the quantum vacuum is a very interesting thing, because modern science says that we live, or the galaxy, reality, whatever you want to call it, we live in space. We live in space, and it's an empty container with matter, but they're all spaces that are empty, that has nothing there. But through observation and analysis, science has proved that no, they're all particles that manifest, energetic fluctuations that will manifest out of nowhere and disappear. And if it was truly nothing, if we were truly in in a space where there's a space where, a container and just matter, whatever, but that container is just space, it's just empty room, there would be no particles coming out of nowhere. There would be no reflections happening. But in a quantum vacuum, we see things happen. We see that even in space, even what they will consider an empty state of space, that molecules, energy, it manifests and disappears. Why is that? I think, I think it's called the Casimir effect. I'm not entirely too sure, but there are energetic interactions happening, even in empty space. So nothing is truly empty. But see, that's what I'm saying. Even the container, even the space where everything is also an energetic structure. It's energy manifested. It gave potential to potential. That's how divine laws can happen. That's how rules and regulations of this world that we can't stop, we can't ban divine law. We have to abide by it. And we had no association to induce it. Those are divine laws. How can divine laws happen to reality itself? Well, reality has to be within something, and within that something, laws have to be in place. Just how when you make a computer game, you know, that computer game was constructed based on the rules of the digital reality that was created. You can't make a game that's completely different and not compatible with the digital environment that has already been created. How would you do it, and where would you do it? You couldn't do it. It has to be within that framework. So it's the same thing. You know, quantum vacuum proves, at the very least, that even within empty space, there are energetic interactions occurring, molecules appearing out of nowhere, which shows that, oh, so the container that reality expresses itself may also truly, in a very fundamental sense, be a container. You know, be a space where reality functions, but reality cannot break out of and is bounded by the rules and variation. And that, to me, will reflect a creator. If we could prove that, you know, the evidence shows to me, and the information shows to me, that if there are structured energetic responses consistently happening in which what we call empty space, that has an effect on how we could form creation, manifestation, how reality itself can express, but it's also, you know, constructed to express itself in specific forms, that to me points to a conscious creator. That to me points to someone creating certain laws for this to occur. Another, you know, once again, I don't want to keep making the same point, but the Big Bang, once again, is a small reflection of exactly what I'm talking about. Just how our reality came from a small finite point that contained all the information, all potential, and then expressed itself. Well, that to me is a reflection of God, God's source, unified energetic information singularity, expressing itself in the form of a reality. Saying, okay, I want to create a reality. Let me create the space, and then let me toss a whole bunch of energy with information within it, and let me see it, you know, interact, collide, and see what happens over time. And that, to me, once again, reflects a conscious creator. A very interesting thing I actually was looking up is consciousness binding. I didn't know what this was at the time. I looked it up, you know, preparing for the video. Consciousness binding. What is that? Well, consciousness binding pretty much shows, it's kind of like, you could say the human body. The human body are composed of billions of so many different small micro variations of molecules, cells, neurons, all these different things working together to keep the body and the mind at a coherent state. There are multiple things happening within us, but they're all working together. So the question becomes, and it's very interesting, that's why conscious binding is so interesting to me, is that if you take a blood cell out of you, are you that blood cell? Am I a blood cell? No, I'm Leon Milton, but no, the blood cell is a micro part of me, so it is me. And it has certain sentience, certain obligations for it to do within my body. So that's what conscious binding simply means, is that multiple variations of something that are contributing to the unification, the unity of a higher goal, a higher understanding. Just how your body works all these different cells in your body works to keep you healthy and keep you functioning. So that's essentially what conscious binding is, but that's interesting to me, right? Because we have the human body, just one human body has billions amongst billions amongst billions of cells, and they all work in harmony to induce unconsciousness experience for myself. And they are all part of me, are me, with all different levels of consciousness and understanding of what they're supposed to do. I can make free will, but the cells, they generally are operating with an understanding. And people would say, well, no, they're not. What do you mean cells are operating with understanding? No, they're not. They're just doing what, like a machine. They're doing what the information within them or how they were structured to induce a consistent pattern of exchange, a pattern of interaction. But no, we have examples where cells will stop doing what they were supposed to do. And people say, well, that's a malfunction. Malfunction, well, I would say, this is what I'm gonna say. Not to go too deep with that, but consciousness binding exists. There are different variations happening within you, within the human body right now to induce consciousness. And that, once again, to me, gives more credence, more evidence to a creator. Just how, the Bible, religious texts, documents, that all humans, all creation is small reflections to the creator, giving the creator the full totality of consciousness. So it's like you could say all of creation are small reflections of the totality of the perception of God. And to me, that shows a greater understanding or a greater complexity of moving towards a source reflection. That God source, that unified singularity made everything, and just how cells work in the human body to induce consciousness. We're doing the same for God. We're doing the same unity through differences. It's very interesting to me. But why does this relate to you? Why do you care? Why? Okay, sure. He's a reflection of God. I'm a reflection of God. We're all God's children. I've heard this in my Sunday night school. I've heard this many times. Why does this relate to me? Well, it relates to you because, that's probably one of the most important things to actually know. Because once you accept this, you begin to remember that you come from source. That you yourself is an energetic, informative structure taking a temporary manifestation as a human. But you are not the human itself. The human is a reflection of you. We are a reflection of God, the spirit of God's source, being manifested into a medium of a human body. Okay, if you take that seriously, you will understand that the potential of humans is not within the body. The potential of what we can do, of what we're capable of, will never be fully explored and fully understood by understanding the physicality of us. Because going back to everything I said, if God's source is energetic potential, energy with intrinsic informational value, which is infinite and eternal, that means that we ourselves as humans, in all things really, but just focusing on humans, have infinite and eternal potential that's energetic, but can manifest as informational manifestations. That's interesting to me. No one told me that, no one, so when people say you're a reflection of God, well, what does that mean? And also, what can I do with that? Why does this relate to me? Well, it relates to you because there's a divine power within you. Call it divinity, spark of the Lord, whatever you want to call it. There is a reflection of you that really gives you power to do things that may seem kind of ridiculous, that may seem a little bit, too much. You have power, potential in you that's unrealized. And if we don't stop looking at ourselves as just humans and start looking at ourselves as divine reflections of source that has inherent power and potential because of that, we're going to keep going through the same cycle of limiting ourselves. So it's important, because it's kind of like if a dog doesn't know it's a dog, if a human doesn't know it's divine, if a friend doesn't know it's a foe, if you don't know your true self, how are you able, you cannot walk the path. You know, I say a funny thing in Monopoly. If you're playing Monopoly and you don't know your piece and you roll the dice, how can you move? You can roll, you can think, but you're not even sure who you are. But you're a divine, infinite, and eternal being, reflection of source, taking a temporary residency in the body, or whatever you want to call it. You know, people could debate that all they want, but what is it, you know, I'm not here to, you know, go too far on the other perspective. This is the perspective I have. Now, you know, I'm really, you know, this is Reality Decoded, where I talk about reality and different functions of it. But what I want to say is just take a few minutes to really summarize how these ideas can be used in your life. Because when it comes to people explaining the world, or when I watch science videos, I never see the science video be like, all right, this is how you can understand how a black hole works and the gravity and all that stuff. And then now this is how you can apply it to your life. We don't have that application of scientific analysis of understanding of these grandiose ideas and how the common person can use it to better and empower themselves in their life. And I thought about that. So, and that's why, you know, I try to say, why does this relate to you and stuff? But I just want to take a few moments to kind of summarize why these ideas matter to you. Why does it actually matter? Well, understanding the fundamentals of energetic information, infinite and eternal potential, and source will assist with embracing aspects such as self-awareness, personal growth, and understanding others. For now you know what you are, the potential you hold, and how everyone else holds the same potential, but manifested in different ways. That's simple. We are all reflections of energetic potential. Every human is an energetic, informative structure that's constantly changing, extremely fluid, based on many different factors, but our comprehension, our beliefs. And the more you understand your character, the more you understand the game you have logged into, the better you are able to navigate and express the potential that we all hold.